If you asked anyone who knew us, they'd say Daniel and I were the perfect couple. The kind of couple people post about on Facebook with hashtags like couple goals and true love exists. We had the beautiful suburban home, the golden retriever, the shiny black SUV, and a circle of friends who admired us for making it work when so many others didn't. But here's the thing about perfection. It's fragile. It only takes one crack to let the truth bleed through. Daniel and I met 8 years ago at a networking event in downtown Chicago. I was 26, working as a marketing coordinator at a startup, and he was the charming, confident business consultant who knew exactly how to light up a room. He had that effortless charisma, the kind that made you feel like you were the only person he saw. I remember laughing at one of his jokes, and he looked at me in a way that made my stomach flutter. From that night on, we were inseparable. He pursued me like I was his dream project. Flowers at work, late-night phone calls, spontaneous weekend getaways. Within a year, he proposed under the city lights by Navy Pier. Everyone said he was the perfect man, and honestly, I believed it too. Our wedding was everything I ever dreamed of. Elegant, intimate, and emotional. My father cried when he walked me down the aisle. Daniel whispered forever in my ear as we danced our first dance to Ed Sheeran's Perfect. Looking back now, that word, forever, feels like a cruel joke. For the first few years, life was good, stable. We both focused on our careers, supported each other's dreams, and built what looked like a solid foundation. He traveled often for work, client meetings, conferences, training sessions. Sometimes I'd miss him terribly, but he always called me from his hotel, sent me photos of his dinner, and texted me "Good night, beautiful" before bed. I never doubted him, not once. Then, slowly, things began to shift. It started subtly. A missed call here, a forgotten text there. "Sorry, babe," he'd say, with that disarming smile. "The meeting ran late." Or, "The client wanted to grab drinks." Always reasonable explanations, always calm and convincing. But my gut started whispering something wasn't right. One night, I was folding laundry when I noticed a faint lipstick stain on one of his white dress shirts. It was barely there, almost invisible unless you looked closely. I laughed it off at first, assuming maybe it was from me, though I hadn't worn lipstick that shade in weeks. When I asked him about it, he looked genuinely puzzled, then said, "Oh, that must have been from the client's wife when she hugged me goodbye. You know how people can be touchy." He said it so casually, I didn't question it further. I wanted to believe him. After all, Daniel had never given me a reason not to trust him. He was kind, affectionate, and always told me he loved me. Why would I start doubting that now? But the whispers in my mind didn't stop. They grew louder each time he traveled. His trips became more frequent, sometimes with only a day's notice. Opportunity I can't pass up, he'd say, packing his suitcase while humming to himself. He always seemed relaxed before leaving, but oddly tense when he came back, like someone carrying invisible weight. He'd hug me tight, tell me I missed him, and then spend hours catching up on emails in his home office. I'd told myself I was being paranoid, that I needed to trust my husband. But still, I started noticing patterns. His cologne smelled different. He began hitting the gym more often. He'd shave before every trip, though he never cared much before. When I asked him why he was working out so much, he grinned and said, "Trying to stay young for you, baby." I smiled back, but something in his eyes looked distant. Then came the night everything started to unravel. It was late, around midnight, when I woke up to use the bathroom. On my way back, I heard his phone buzzing on the nightstand. The screen lit up, conference reminder, Hotel Gardenia. Daniel had told me he was going to a business seminar in St. Louis, staying at a Marriott. I thought nothing of it until the name Hotel Gardenia stuck in my head. It wasn't a chain hotel I recognized. Out of curiosity, or maybe instinct, I Googled it. My heart started pounding as the search results came up. Hotel Gardenia, a romantic boutique hotel in Nashville. Nashville? He wasn't supposed to be in Nashville. I stared at the screen, my stomach turning cold. I told myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe his company changed the hotel last minute. Maybe he mixed up the location. I spent the rest of that night staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside, wondering if my marriage was built on lies. The next morning, he kissed me goodbye and said, "Love you. I'll be back Friday." I smiled weakly and said, "Love you too." The door closed behind him, and for the first time in my marriage, I didn't feel safe in those words. 3 days later, I got the proof I didn't want. While doing laundry, again, I found a folded hotel receipt in his jacket pocket. It wasn't for the Marriott. It was for Hotel Gardenia, Nashville. 1 room, 2 guests, dinner for 2, champagne. My hands started shaking. I read the total 3 times just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Then I saw the date, 2 weeks ago, when he told me he was in Dallas for client training. I sat on the floor, gripping that small piece of paper like it was a bomb about to go off. There was no misunderstanding this time. No innocent explanation, no client dinner, no professional excuse. He had lied. And worse, he had been lying for a long time. When he came home that Friday night, I didn't confront him right away. I couldn't. My heart was pounding so violently I thought I might collapse. I watched him unpack, smiling as if nothing had changed. He even brought me a souvenir, a small charm bracelet with a guitar on it. "Thought you'd like it. Nashville's the music city, after all." He said Nashville like it meant nothing, like the lie itself didn't exist between us. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask who she was, why he did it, how long it had been going on. But instead, I smiled, thanked him, and excused myself to the bathroom, where I sat on the cold tile floor, sobbing silently so he wouldn't hear me. That night, as he slept beside me, I stared at the man I thought I knew, the man who promised me forever, and I realized something terrifying. The perfect marriage I had been living in wasn't real. It was a performance, and I was the only one who didn't know the script.
The next morning, I woke up before Daniel. He was still asleep beside me, his arms slung across my waist, his breathing steady and peaceful, like a man without a single worry in the world. I stared at him for a long time, wondering how he could look so calm while my entire heart was cracking in silence. I wanted to wake him up and demand the truth right then and there, but something in me stopped. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was disbelief. Or maybe it was the small, desperate hope that there was still some explanation that didn't end with my marriage burning to the ground. Instead, I quietly got out of bed and went to the kitchen. My hands trembled as I made coffee. Everything felt wrong. The house felt colder, quieter, like the walls themselves were keeping secrets. When Daniel finally came downstairs, he looked fresh and cheerful, still in that post-trip glow. He kissed the top of my head and said, "Morning, babe." "Morning," I replied, trying to sound normal. He poured himself a cup of coffee, glanced at his phone, and casually mentioned, "By the way, I might have to fly out again next week, just for a couple of days. New client in Denver." My chest tightened. "Denver," I repeated. "Yeah," he said easily. "Shouldn't be too bad. You know how these things go." I nodded and took a sip of my coffee to hide the shake in my hands. He didn't notice. As soon as he left for work, I sat down at the dining table and stared at the receipt again. The name Hotel Gardenia stared back at me, taunting me, mocking me. And then I saw something I hadn't noticed before. There was a small note scribbled in the margin of the receipt. It said, "Next time, same suite. Heart." That tiny heart broke me more than anything else, because that wasn't a casual fling. That was intimacy. That was routine. That was familiarity. Someone had written that, and I was determined to find out who. The search begins. That night, after Daniel fell asleep, I quietly slipped his phone off the nightstand. My heart was hammering in my chest so loud I thought it might wake him. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do. I'd never gone through his phone before. But after finding that receipt, I couldn't live with the doubt anymore. He had a passcode, but I already knew it. His birthday. Typical Daniel, confident enough to think he'd never need to hide anything from me. When I unlocked it, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I opened his messages first. Nothing suspicious, just work chats, friends, some family texts. He must have been careful. Then I checked his email. Clean. Finally, I opened his photos. That's where I found the first clue. Buried deep in an album labeled Work Travel, I found a series of photos. Scenic shots, hotel lobbies, conference rooms. But one caught my attention immediately. A reflection in a mirror. It was Daniel, smiling at the camera. But behind him, blurred in the background, there was a woman's figure sitting on the bed. Long dark hair, slender build. Her face was turned away, but it was enough. He hadn't even realized she was in the frame. I zoomed in, my stomach twisting. Whoever she wasn't just a random person. She was comfortable there. She belonged in that room. The coworker. Over the next few days, I became someone I barely recognized. I started paying closer attention to everything Daniel said, every call he made, every time he mentioned a name. One evening, during dinner, he casually brought up a coworker named Sophie. Yeah, Sophie from the Nashville team helped us close the deal. She's sharp, probably the best on their side. I felt the name lodge itself in my chest like a thorn. Sophie, I repeated. Have I heard that name before? He shrugged. Probably not. She's new, just transferred a few months ago. From Nashville? I asked. He looked up briefly, then nodded. Yeah, why? Oh, no reason, I said quickly, forcing a smile. But inside, my blood went cold. I finally had a name. After dinner, while he showered, I grabbed my laptop and opened Facebook. I typed Sophie plus his company name. Hundreds of results popped up, but one stood out. Sophie L., Marketing Executive, Nashville office. Her profile picture showed a woman with dark brown hair and green eyes. The same build, the same hair length, the same kind of person who'd be sitting on that hotel bed. I clicked her profile. She was beautiful, effortless so. Her timeline was filled with business events, travel shots, cocktails, and team bonding nights. And there, in one of the group photos from a company retreat, I saw him, Daniel, standing right next to her, his arm around her shoulder, both smiling, too comfortably. I stared at that photo for what felt like hours. My throat burned, my hands clenched so tightly they hurt. I didn't cry, not yet. I just sat there absorbing the truth. Daniel wasn't just lying about his business trips. He was lying about who he was with on them.
Wasn't going to confess. He wasn't even going to feel guilty. He had built this whole double life, one for me, one for her. And he was perfectly content keeping both. The trap. For days, I couldn't focus on anything. At work, my performance dropped. At night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured them together, in hotel rooms, at dinners, laughing over wine, while I sat at home folding his shirts. Then one night, while scrolling through his company's LinkedIn page, I saw a post that made my heart pound. It was about an upcoming regional conference in Denver, the same one he said he'd be attending next week. The photos from last year showed all the key staff, including Sophie. That's when it hit me. I could catch him. So I started planning. I called my boss the next day and requested a few personal days off. Family reasons, I said. She didn't ask questions. Then I booked a ticket to Denver under my maiden name. I'd leave a day after Daniel, just enough time for him to settle in. I'd stay at a different hotel, one near the conference center, and I'd watch. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my friends, not my sister. Because if I was wrong, if somehow I'd misread everything, I didn't want anyone to know how broken I'd become inside. The flight. When the day came, Daniel packed his suitcase, kissed me goodbye, and said, "I'll call you when I land." I hugged him tightly,
breathing him in one last time. "Be safe," I whispered. He smiled. "Always." After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed and cried for the first time since finding the receipt. Not because of what he'd done, but because of what I was about to do. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who followed her husband across states. But love, or betrayal, makes you do things you never imagined. That night, I packed a small bag, printed the conference schedule I found online, and boarded a flight to Denver. The entire time, I felt like my chest was being crushed by invisible hands. I kept replaying every moment of our marriage. Every "I love you," every late-night laugh, every fake business trip. How many of them were real? How many were lies? When I landed, I checked into a small boutique hotel near downtown. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I dressed in a plain black sweater and jeans, tied my hair back, and grabbed a pair of sunglasses. It was time. The conference center. The hotel hosting the conference was huge. Glass walls, banners, bustling crowds. I stayed in the lobby, pretending to check my phone, while my eyes scanned the crowd. And then I saw him. Daniel, my husband, smiling that same charming smile I once fell in love with. And beside him, her, Sophie, dressed in a sleek navy dress, laughing at something he said, touching his arm in that familiar way. They looked like a couple. Effortless, comfortable, practiced. I felt the world tilt around me. I took a step back, my breath catching in my throat. I wanted to run to him, to scream, to throw the truth in his face, but I couldn't move. I was frozen, watching the life I thought I had crumble right before my eyes. He glanced toward the crowd, and for one terrifying second, I thought he saw me, but he didn't. He just leaned closer to her and whispered something that made her laugh again. And in that moment, I knew. There was no going back, no saving this marriage, no pretending anymore. The hotel room. That night, I followed them. I waited outside the conference hotel, sitting in a rental car with my heart hammering so hard it hurt. Around 9:30, I saw them walk out together, hand in hand. My stomach turned. They didn't go to dinner. They went to the elevator. I watched as they disappeared behind the glass doors. Room 614. I saw the number when they stepped in. I sat there for almost an hour, staring at that door through the windshield, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I wanted to storm in, throw the door open, and end the charade. But then I realized something. If I went in there tonight, I'd just be another heartbroken wife caught in the storm. But if I waited, if I played my cards right, I could end his double life on my terms. So I turned the key, started the car, and drove back to my hotel, my tears finally spilling down my face as the city lights blurred in the rearview mirror. That was the night I stopped being his wife and started being his reckoning.
The next morning, I woke up in that Denver hotel room feeling hollow. I had barely slept. My eyes were swollen, my throat dry, my heart aching so deeply I could feel it in my bones. I'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, replaying what I saw. My husband, my best friend, the man who promised to love me in sickness and in health, laughing, touching, holding another woman like she was the center of his world. And the cruelest part, he looked happy. He looked alive.
Not the man who came home to me every weekend pretending to be tired. Not the man who scrolled through his phone during dinner or made excuses to avoid intimacy. This version of him, the one I saw with Sophie, looked like the man I used to know. That's what broke me the most. A new version of me. When you discover betrayal like that, something inside you dies, but something else, something sharper, is born in its place. The woman who used to cry at rom-coms and write him love notes before business trips, she was gone. In her place stood someone colder, quieter, and infinitely more dangerous. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to end him. Slowly, strategically, and legally. I spent the morning writing everything down. Every trip, every lie, every receipt. I logged dates, screenshots, and even copies of our joint bank statements. My plan wasn't just emotional anymore. It was tactical. If Daniel could lead a double life, so could I. The evidence hunt. After breakfast, I started by calling my friend Lily, a paralegal I'd known since college. She didn't know what was going on, but I trusted her with my life. "Hey, can you do me a favor?" I asked casually. "Sure, what's up?" "Can you look up any corporate events for Northstone Consulting that happened in Nashville last quarter? I think my husband was involved in one, but I can't find the details." She paused. "You mean Daniel?" "Yeah." Her tone shifted immediately. Okay, yeah, I can check. You okay though? You sound weird." I smiled bitterly. Just tired. It's been a long week. She agreed to send whatever she found by the end of the day. Meanwhile, I went back to social media. I wasn't looking at Sophie's feed this time. I was digging deeper. LinkedIn, Instagram tags, local business press releases, anything tied to Northstone Consulting or Daniel's department. That's when I found something that made my blood run cold. There was an anniversary post on Northstone's official page celebrating 5 years of partnership success between their Chicago and Nashville teams. The photo? Daniel and Sophie, standing side by side, holding a glass trophy. The caption read, "Our power duo, Daniel Adams and Sophie L., leading innovation and collaboration across states. Congratulations on another record-breaking year." Power duo. God, the irony. They'd been working together and apparently celebrating together for years. The realization. I scrolled through hundreds of likes and comments, all congratulating them. I wanted to throw my laptop across the room. But then I noticed a pattern. Several coworkers from both offices commenting things like, "Dynamic team, you two make magic happen, dream team of the year." That's when the pit formed in my stomach. This wasn't a secret affair in the shadows. They were public, just not to me. People knew. People in his company probably saw them together and assumed they were a couple. And Daniel never corrected them, did he? Because for all they knew, he was single when he traveled. That realization made me physically sick. I stumbled to the bathroom, gripping the sink as I stared at my reflection. Pale, tired, broken. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. The phone call. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. It was Lily. Okay, so I looked into that company stuff. I found a big conference in Nashville 3 months ago, and I checked the attendance list. Daniel Adams was registered, and guess what? "What?" I whispered. So was a Sophie L. from the Nashville branch. They even checked into the same hotel room block. My stomach dropped. "You sure about that?" "Positive." Oh, and I found expense reports too. Both submitted reimbursements from Hotel Gardenia. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Hotel Gardenia. The same one from the receipt I found. I sank into the chair, barely breathing. "Lily," I said quietly, "I need you to promise you won't tell anyone about this." "Of course not. What's going on, though? Is Daniel—" "I'll tell you later, but I think my husband's been cheating on me." There was silence on the line. Then a sharp inhale. "Oh my God. Sarah." "I'll be fine," I lied. "I just need proof." The digital trail. For the next week, I became obsessed. Back home in Chicago, I transformed our guest room into a command center. My laptop was always open, covered in sticky notes, receipts, screenshots. When Daniel left for work, I combed through his computer. He used a shared iCloud drive for his files, and though he was careful, he wasn't smart enough to hide everything. I found several expense reports for client dinners with mysterious gaps in the receipts, and one document, buried deep in an old folder, contained calendar invites from the past 2 years. Half of those business trips overlapped with hotel stays in Nashville, every single one. I printed everything and stored it in a folder marked insurance, because that's what it was now. Insurance for the inevitable. Daniel thought I was naive. He had no idea the woman he'd underestimated was building a case against him, brick by brick. The shift in him. Around this time, Daniel started acting strange, or maybe I was just finally seeing him clearly. He seemed jumpy, distracted, constantly checking his phone. He'd laugh at texts when he thought I wasn't looking. One night during dinner, I asked, "So, how's work been lately?" He smiled, that fake, polished smile I used to find charming. "Busy, but good. The Denver trip went great." "Oh? Who did you go with?" He hesitated. Just the usual team." "Sophie?" I asked, watching his eyes. He froze for a split second, then recovered. "Yeah, she was there too. Why?" I shrugged, pretending to stir my food. "No reason, just curious what makes her so special." His jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't answer. And that's when I knew he could sense it, that something in me had changed. The breaking point. A week later, I decided to test him one last time before executing my plan. He told me he was going on a weekend training retreat with senior staff in Milwaukee. I smiled and wished him good luck, but instead of staying home, I followed him again. I drove behind his rental car for almost 2 hours, keeping my distance. He exited the freeway, not toward Milwaukee, but toward a small lakeside resort outside Madison. My heart raced as I watched him pull into the parking lot. Minutes later, I saw her, Sophie, stepping out of her car in a sundress, smiling as she waved at him. I parked down the street, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. I wanted to explode, but I didn't. I grabbed my phone, zoomed in, and took photos. Dozens of them. Him opening her car door, her kissing his cheek, them walking hand in hand toward the entrance. I had the proof I needed. Proof that no lawyer, no court, no friend of his could deny. The plan. When I got home that night, I opened a new document on my computer titled Operation Freedom. I listed everything I needed to do, in order. Contact an attorney specializing in marital fraud and infidelity, secure copies of all financial accounts, move half the savings into a separate account under my name, retrieve and store all physical evidence, receipts, photos, screenshots, and wait for the right moment. His birthday. Daniel's birthday was 2 weeks away, and I decided that would be the day I'd end it all, not just emotionally, but publicly. He loved throwing parties. Every year he invited our friends, co-workers, even his boss. And every year I played the perfect wife, smiling, cooking, laughing. This time, I'd be smiling for a different reason. This setup. 2 days before his birthday, I met with my attorney, Rachel Morgan. She was direct, professional, and sharp as a blade. She flipped through the evidence folder and said, "Based on what you've shown me, you have a strong case. He's been committing financial and emotional infidelity for years. If you want to proceed with divorce, we can file immediately, and given the documentation, you would likely walk away with the house and a significant portion of assets. I nodded, slowly. I want him to see everything crumble in front of him. She smirked. Revenge before justice. I like it. But be careful. Don't let him sense anything before you're ready. Oh, he won't, I said coldly. He still thinks I'm the same woman who believed his hotel receipts. The calm before the storm. That night, I cooked his favorite dinner. I laughed at his jokes. I even wore the dress he loved. The red one he once said made me look like the woman of his dreams. He didn't suspect a thing. As he talked about his busy week ahead, I just nodded, smiling softly. In my head, I wasn't listening to a word. I was imagining the look on his face when everything came crashing down. I had already printed copies of the photos from Madison. I had the receipts, the messages, the hotel bookings, the time-stamped screenshots, all neatly arranged in a leather folder. I also had a copy of the email I'd drafted to his boss, containing evidence of his unprofessional relationship with a subordinate. Because if I was losing my marriage, he was losing his career too. When he kissed me goodnight, I let him. And as he fell asleep, I whispered quietly to myself, "Enjoy your last peaceful dream, Daniel. Tomorrow, the performance ends."
The day of Daniel's birthday dawned like any other. Clear sky, birds chirping, the smell of coffee drifting through the kitchen. It could have been the start of a beautiful day, and maybe it would have been, if I wasn't planning to destroy him before the night was over. I'd woken up early, pretending to be excited. I kissed him on the cheek, whispered, "Happy birthday, babe," and served him breakfast in bed. Pancakes, bacon, the whole cliché. He smiled, completely oblivious. "Wow, someone's spoiling me today," he said. I smiled back. "You deserve it." If only he knew how those words were laced with venom. I had everything planned down to the last detail. That night, Daniel was hosting his annual birthday party. Our house filled with friends, colleagues, and family. He loved being the center of attention, the golden boy who had it all. I used to think that confidence was sexy. Now I saw it for what it really was. Arrogance built on lies. By the time he left for his morning workout, I'd already set my plan in motion. The email bomb. I sat at my desk, logged into my laptop, and stared at the email draft I'd prepared for weeks. The subject line was simple. Subject: Serious HR concern, relationship between Daniel Adams and subordinate employee. Attached were photos from Madison, the Nashville receipts, screenshots, and calendar overlaps proving inappropriate behavior on company trips. The recipients: his boss, the company's HR director, and his company's regional VP. Before hitting send, I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "Happy birthday, darling." Click. Email sent. It felt like setting off a silent bomb, one that would explode right as the guests were raising their glasses to toast him. The calm before guests arrive. The rest of the day moved in slow motion. I cleaned the house, arranged decorations, set the table, and baked his favorite cake, chocolate ganache with bourbon glaze. Every movement was calculated, controlled, deliberate. I didn't cry. I didn't waver. I just waited. Around 5 p.m., Daniel came home carrying flowers. "For my amazing wife," he said with a grin. I forced a smile. "You're sweet." He had no idea he was handing flowers to the woman about to dismantle his world. "You okay?" he asked. "You seem quiet." "Just tired," I said softly. "Been running around, getting everything ready for tonight." He kissed my forehead. "You're the best, Sarah. Seriously, I don't know what I'd do without you." I looked into his eyes, those same eyes that had once promised forever, and smiled faintly. "You're about to find out," I whispered under my breath. The party begins. By 7, the house was buzzing with laughter and music. Guests filled the living room, holding glasses of wine, chatting in small circles.
The smell of food mixed with perfume and candle wax. Daniel was in his element, shaking hands, hugging friends, making jokes. I watched from across the room, quiet and composed. Everyone thought I was glowing with pride for my husband. In reality, I was counting down the minutes to detonation. At 7:45, I checked my phone. No new messages, no calls. HR must have been reviewing the email. That was fine. The timing didn't have to be perfect. All I needed was the truth to start leaking. By 8:10, people began gathering around Daniel for the toast. He held his drink high, flashing his trademark confident smile. "To another year of success, love, and amazing people like all of you," he said, his voice booming over the music. Everyone cheered. Glasses clinked. Then he turned toward me. And, of course, to my beautiful wife, Sarah, the woman who makes my life complete. "I love you, babe." I smiled back, my heart steady and cold. "Love you too," I said, my tone as smooth as glass. That was his last moment of peace. The message that changed everything. The next sound I heard wasn't laughter. It was the ding of a phone. Then another, then another. People began glancing at their screens. Conversations died down. A murmur spread across the room like wildfire. Daniel's phone buzzed too. He reached into his pocket, frowning. "What the hell?" He read the screen. His expression shifted from confusion to panic in seconds. "Sarah, what did you do?" I sipped my drink and smiled faintly. "Just giving you a birthday surprise." "What?" He stopped mid-sentence as another alert came in. Someone from his company group chat gasped loudly, "Oh my God, Daniel!" Within moments, half the room knew. People began whispering, some avoiding his eyes, others staring at me like I was the villain. But I didn't care. I stood calmly as Daniel's professional mask crumbled in real time. The public confrontation. "Sarah," he hissed, grabbing my arm and dragging me toward the hallway. "What the hell did you send them?" I pulled free and looked him dead in the eye. "Evidence." "Evidence of what?" "Oh, come on, Daniel, don't insult me. You really think I didn't know about Sophie? About Nashville? About Madison? About Hotel Gardenia?" His face went pale. You were spying on me?" I laughed bitterly. "Spying? No, I was collecting receipts. You gave me plenty." His jaw tightened. "You're ruining my career." "No," I said softly, stepping closer. "You ruined your own career the day you decided to treat our marriage like a business trip."
And the living room, where the whispers had turned to stunned silence. "Sarah, please, not here. Let's talk about this later." "Later?" I snapped. "You've been talking to her for years, Daniel. You made me look like a fool. You made our marriage your cover story. Later doesn't exist anymore." His voice dropped to a whisper. "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to go this far." "Then why did you take her to the same hotel every time? Why did you tell her, next time, same suite?" The blood drained from his face. He knew I'd seen the receipt. By now, a few guests had gathered near the hallway, pretending not to listen. Daniel's boss, yes, his boss, stood near the door, phone still in hand, his face unreadable. I realized HR must have forwarded my email chain to him directly. "Daniel," his boss said slowly, "we'll need to discuss this first thing Monday morning." The room went silent. Daniel's eyes darted between him and me. "Sir, please, this isn't what it looks like." "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like," his boss said coldly. And then, as if the universe couldn't resist one final twist, the front door opened. Sophie walked in. The mistresses enter. She looked nervous, clutching a small gift bag. "Hey, sorry I'm late." Her voice trailed off when she saw the crowd. The silence was suffocating. Dozens of eyes turned toward her. Daniel froze, his mouth opening slightly. "Sophie." Her face went pale. "Daniel, what's going on?"
I stepped forward, calm and collected. "Oh, perfect timing. You must be Sophie. I've heard so much about you." The room collectively inhaled. Her lips parted, eyes darting between us. "You must be the wife. Yes, the woman he's been lying to for the past 3 years while pretending you were just his coworker." She blinked, color draining from her face. I I didn't know he was still married," I said sharply. "Yeah, that's his favorite lie." Daniel stepped in, panic in his voice. "Sarah, please stop this." "Stop?" I said, my voice rising for the first time. "You made me believe we were perfect. You made me think every missed call, every hotel receipt, every damn business trip was for us. And all this time, you were building a second life, one where I didn't exist." My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from release, from freedom. The room was dead silent. Only the sound of Daniel's shallow breathing filled the air. Finally, I looked at Sophie again. "You can have him. You'll need to, because by tomorrow morning, he'll have no job, no marriage, and no reputation." Sophie turned and left without another word. Daniel stood frozen, staring at me like I'd stabbed him. Maybe in a way I had. "You've destroyed me," he said hoarsely. I tilted my head. "No, Daniel, you destroyed us. I just finally handed you the mirror." He tried to grab my arm again, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me," I said coldly. "You don't get to touch me anymore." Then I turned to the guests. "Thank you all for coming. I think the party's over." I walked upstairs, feeling their eyes on my back the entire way. But for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt strong. My hands were steady. My chest was light. I went into the bedroom, grabbed the folder marked insurance, and slipped it into my overnight bag. The rest, the clothes, the pictures, the memories, could rot in this house. I didn't need them anymore. The goodbye. When I came back downstairs, the guests had mostly cleared out. Daniel was sitting alone at the dining table, head in his hands. The birthday cake sat untouched beside him. Candles melted down to stubs. "Where are you going?" he asked quietly. "Somewhere you're not." "Can we at least talk? There's nothing left to say." He looked up, eyes red. "I did love you, Sarah." I paused at the door, my hand on the knob. "No, you loved the way I made you look. That's not love, Daniel. That's vanity." Then I walked out. The night air hit me like a cleansing wave. Cold, sharp, honest. I didn't look back as I got in the car and drove away. Behind me, the house, that perfect suburban dream, grew smaller in the rearview mirror until it disappeared completely. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The aftermath. I checked into a small Airbnb that night and turned off my phone. No calls, no messages, just silence. It was beautiful. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of notifications. My email was full of HR responses, legal confirmations from Rachel, and even a message from Daniel's boss confirming that his employment had been suspended pending investigation. He was done. His career, his secret, everything gone in a single night. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, I just sat there, staring out the window, watching the sunrise. It wasn't triumph I felt, it was peace. The kind of peace that comes after a storm finally passes, leaving behind wreckage, but also clarity. I texted Lily a single message. "It's over." She replied almost instantly, "You're stronger than you think." Maybe I was. The lesson. In the days that followed, I filed for divorce. Rachel handled everything, swift, clean, ruthless. I transferred the funds, secured the house in my name, and blocked Daniel on every platform. He tried to contact me once through email. It said, "Please, Sarah, I lost everything. Can we talk?" I didn't reply. I didn't owe him closure. Instead, I printed that email, slipped it into my folder of evidence, and labeled it Final Exhibit. Because that's what he'd become, a case study, a warning, a lesson written in betrayal. The new beginning. 2 months later, I sold the house and moved to a small apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. The first morning there, I stood on the balcony with a cup of coffee, feeling the cold wind on my face. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for someone's lies to unravel. I wasn't checking receipts or counting days between trips. I was just living. Freedom didn't feel like revenge anymore. It felt like peace. And in that quiet moment, I whispered to myself, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in truth. He thought he broke me, but all he did was set me free.
6 months. That's how long it's been since the birthday party. The night everything broke. The night Daniel's world imploded and mine finally began. People say time heals all wounds. That's a lie. Time doesn't heal. It just gives you space. Space to breathe, to think, to rebuild, and sometimes to forgive, but not forget. When I first moved into my little apartment by Lake Michigan, I thought I'd feel empty. I thought I'd miss the house, the routines, the dinners for two that turned into dinners alone. But I didn't. I felt light. Fragile, yes, but lighter than I'd felt in years. Every morning, I'd open the window and let the cold Chicago air fill the room. It bit at my skin, sharp and honest, reminding me that I was still alive. And that was enough. The ghost in my inbox. For a while, Daniel tried to contact me. First through mutual friends, then through emails that sounded desperate, then through a handwritten letter that arrived one gray morning. I didn't open it right away. I stared at the envelope for hours, just running my fingers over his handwriting, the same handwriting that once filled birthday cards and love notes. When I finally opened it, the words inside were pathetic in their simplicity. "I've lost everything, Sarah. I know you'll never forgive me, but I had to try. I loved you, even when I didn't deserve you." He ended it with, "Please, just tell me how to make it right." I folded the letter once, neatly, and tucked it back into the envelope. Then, I threw it into the fireplace. The flames devoured it slowly, curling the edges of the paper into ash. I watched until there was nothing left. No apology, no guilt, no ghosts. Just smoke. The unexpected visit. A few weeks later, Lily showed up at my door with a bottle of wine and that same fiery smile she'd had since college. "Okay," she said, tossing her bag on the couch. "It's been half a year, you, me, wine, and zero talk about men. Deal?" "Deal," I said, laughing for the first time in days. We sat on my balcony, wrapped in blankets, the skyline glowing orange in the distance. The wine loosened our voices, and before long, she brought him up anyway. "You ever think about what you'd say to him if he stood in front of you right now?" she asked. I sighed. I've thought about it too many times. And I'd tell him thank you. Lily blinked. "Thank you? Girl, what?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "Thank you for showing me that I was strong enough to leave. For showing me what real loneliness feels like, so I'd never confuse it with love again." She was silent for a long moment. Then she raised her glass. "To being free." I clinked mine against hers. "To being free." Rebuilding myself. Divorce was finalized 2 months after that. Clean and quick. Rachel had done her magic. I got the house sale, half his savings, and complete closure. Daniel lost his job, moved out of state, and vanished from social media entirely. But here's the thing no one tells you about endings. When the storm clears, the silence is deafening. There were nights I'd still wake up reaching for the other side of the bed. Mornings I'd hear a song that made me freeze because it reminded me of him, laughing in the kitchen, or the way he'd hum while brushing his teeth. The memories didn't disappear. They just stopped hurting as much. And in their place, I found something else. Gratitude. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. I joined a yoga class. I took a road trip by myself. No destination, just me, my car, and a playlist of songs that once made me cry, but now made me feel alive. Each day, I built myself back piece by piece, not to be who I was before Daniel, but to become someone better, someone who didn't need validation to feel enough. The stranger at the coffee shop. It was late autumn when I met Evan. I wasn't looking for anything, not love, not even friendship.
I was sitting in a quiet cafe, sketching in my notebook, when he sat down at the next table with a steaming cup of coffee and a stack of papers. "Mind if I steal some space?" he asked, smiling politely. "Go ahead," I said without looking up. For the next hour, we sat in silence, each lost in our own little world. But when my pencil rolled off the table and he caught it midair like some kind of reflex ninja, I laughed. "Nice reflexes," he asked, smiling politely. "Years of chasing coffee spills," he joked. His humor was easy, his energy calm, nothing like Daniel's charming arrogance. There was no pressure, no sparks flying instantly, just comfort. Like a song you didn't realize you loved until you caught yourself humming it later. When I left, he said, "Hey, maybe next time I'll buy you a refill." I smiled. Maybe. The closure I didn't expect.
Months passed and I ran into Evan again. Then again. Slowly, conversation turned into friendship, and friendship into something softer, something real. One snowy afternoon, we sat on that same balcony where Lily and I once toasted to freedom. He noticed the folder on my desk labeled "The Divorce Files." "You ever think about getting rid of it?" he asked gently. I looked at it, that thick folder filled with documents, photos, receipts, heartbreak. "I used to think I'd keep it forever," I admitted, as proof of what he did. But now? Now I think I'm done carrying proof. I'm ready to carry peace. Evan nodded, understanding without pushing. That's what I liked about him. He didn't try to fix me. He just let me be. The next morning, I walked down to the lake. The water was half frozen, reflecting the gray sky. I opened the folder, took out every piece of paper, and tore them one by one. Receipts, screenshots, hotel bills, all of it, gone. The wind carried the shreds into the water like confetti from a celebration I never got to have. And in that moment, I finally said goodbye. Not to Daniel, not even to the pain, but to the version of myself who thought love meant sacrifice. The call. A few weeks later, my phone rang. Unknown number. Something told me to answer. "Hello? Sarah? It's Daniel." My heart skipped. I hadn't heard his voice in half a year. It was tired, strained, smaller somehow. "I know you don't want to hear from me," he said quickly, "but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I know it doesn't matter now, but I'm in therapy. I'm trying to fix myself. I needed you to know I'm not the same person." I was silent for a moment. "I'm glad you're getting help," I said honestly. He let out a shaky breath. That's all I wanted to hear. You deserve better, Sarah. You always did." "Goodbye, Daniel," I said softly. "Goodbye," he whispered. When I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't feel anger or relief, just peace. It was strange hearing the voice that once had the power to ruin my day and realizing it no longer did. That was my closure. Not revenge, not his suffering, just knowing that I was finally free. The new chapter. Spring came, and with it, warmth. I started painting again, this time selling my work online. Small pieces, mostly landscapes and abstract expressions of emotions I didn't have words for. Evan helped me build a website for my art. He never asked about Daniel Hen, and I never volunteered. He understood that sometimes the most healing thing you can do is not reopen the wound. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Evan asked, "Do you ever regret what happened?" I thought for a long moment. "No," I said finally. "I regret trusting the wrong person, but I don't regret learning how strong I am." He smiled. "That's a hell of a lesson." "Yeah," I said softly. "It is." The epilogue. My own story. Sometimes I still get messages on social media, people who heard rumors, coworkers who remember the scandal, or strangers who stumbled across my art and say, "You seem so calm. How did you move on?" And I always tell them the truth. You don't move on from betrayal. You move through it. You don't forget, you outgrow it. You stop letting their lies define your worth. You stop measuring your healing by how much they regret losing you. And one day you wake up and realize the pain isn't the loudest thing in your head anymore. That's when you know you've made it. I'm not who I was when this all started. I'm not the woman who cried on hotel room floors waiting for answers that would never come. I'm not the woman who begged for love from someone who didn't even respect it. I'm the woman who rebuilt herself from ashes, quietly,
patiently, beautifully. And if you ask me now what I'd tell the version of me who found that first receipt in Daniel's pocket, I'd say this: you're going to lose everything you thought you needed. But in return, you'll find everything you never knew you wanted.